The distress signal pulsed through the void, a desperate plea cutting across the stars. In the grand chambers of the Galactic Council, representatives of 100 worlds gathered around the holographic display, their faces bathed in the crimson glow of the emergency beacon. "Another cry for help from Vexus," announced High Chancellor Zorn, his four eyes blinking in synchronization as the translation matrix deciphered the message. "The Crawl Armada has returned to their system. They request humanitarian assistance and protection." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Vexus, known colloquially as the Abyss, was classified as a death world, a planet so naturally hostile that most spacefaring species considered it uninhabitable. Yet against all odds, the Vex had not only survived, but built a civilization amidst the caustic rains and radiation storms that swept their purple skies. "We should send medical supplies and environmental stabilizers," suggested the Axelian diplomat, their crystalline form shimmering under the chamber lights. "Perhaps negotiators to broker peace with the Crawl." Chancellor Zorn's upper hands twitched a sign of disagreement among his species. "The Terran ambassador has made an alternative proposal." The chamber fell silent as Ambassador Reeves stepped forward. Unlike the exotic forms surrounding her, the human appeared deceptively ordinary, save for the hardened look in her eyes that made even the warrior castes uncomfortable. "Earth will handle this," she stated simply. "We're dispatching the UES Havoc." Gasps and protests erupted. The Havoc was not a relief vessel. It was a warship, one of humanity's most advanced destroyers. And Earth itself was classified as a Class 4 death world, a planet whose inhabitants had evolved under conditions so brutal that they were regarded with both fear and fascination throughout the galaxy. Ambassador Reeves interjected a Phrygian representative voice, modulator pitched high in alarm. "Vexus needs humanitarian aid, not military escalation." Reeves smiled thinly. "What Vexus needs is what humans understand best: survival." As the council descended into heated debate, a quantum message was already speeding toward Earth's orbital command station. Within hours, Captain Elena Marks received her orders. The UES Havoc hung in low Earth orbit, its carbon nanomesh hull, absorbing rather than reflecting light, giving it the appearance of a moving shadow against the blue planet. At 437 meters long, it was not the largest vessel in Earth's fleet, but it was perhaps the most feared. Its sleek, predatory design bore the hallmarks of a civilization that had turned the art of warfare into a precise science. In her quarters, Captain Elena Marks studied the mission briefing on her neural display. At 42, she was relatively young for her command, but 2 decades of service in the harshest frontiers of human space had hardened her beyond her years. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation knot, emphasizing sharp cheekbones and eyes the color of storm clouds. A thin scar ran from her right temple to her jaw, a souvenir from an encounter with pirates in the Rigel system. "Captain," the ship's AI announced, "Admiral Santos requests your presence in the quantum conference room." Elena dismissed the floating display with a flick of her fingers. "Inform him I'm on my way." She navigated through the ship's corridors, nodding to crew members who snapped to attention as she passed. The UES Havoc carried a complement of 217 personnel, each selected not merely for their technical expertise, but for their psychological resilience. Every person aboard had survived conditions that would break most humans, and humans themselves were already considered extraordinarily durable by galactic standards. Admiral Santos's hologram awaited her in the conference chamber, his weathered face grim. "Captain Marks, I assume you've reviewed the Vexus situation." "Yes, sir. Crawl incursion planetary blockade distress signal to the Galactic Council." "That's the official story." Santos's hologram glanced around, as if checking for eavesdroppers, a human habit that persisted even in digital form. "Your actual mission parameters extend beyond the Council's knowledge." Elena felt a familiar tension in her spine. "I suspected as much. Intelligence has confirmed that Vexus possesses a technology they call xenometal. It's a biomechanical alloy with properties we've never seen before, self-healing, adaptive, possibly sentient in some way. The Crawl aren't just performing their usual territory expansion. They're after the xenometal. "And we want it too," Elena stated, rather than asked. Santos nodded. "Earth Defense Command believes this technology could revolutionize our capabilities. But more importantly, we cannot allow the Crawl to obtain it exclusively. Your official orders are to assist Vexus with their Crawl problem. Your actual mission is to secure an alliance that gives us access to xenometal technology." "By any means necessary," Elena asked, her voice carefully neutral. The Admiral's hologram flickered slightly. "Earth is still considered a dangerous upstart by most of the Council. We survive because we're useful when there's fighting to be done. But make no mistake, many of the elder species would be happy to see us contained. This technology could ensure our security for generations." "I understand, sir." "I know you do, Elena." The Admiral's formality slipped momentarily. "That's why you were selected. Your background in both tactical operations and first contact scenarios makes you uniquely qualified. Just remember that while the Council knows we're sending a ship, they believe it's primarily for evacuation and humanitarian support." "A convenient misunderstanding." "Precisely. You depart in 6 hours. Crew selection is at your discretion." As the hologram faded, Elena remained still, contemplating the immense responsibility now resting on her shoulders. Earth's position in the galactic community was precarious, respected for their resilience and combat prowess, but distrusted for those same qualities. Humans were the newcomers, who had survived impossible odds, evolving on a planet that should have killed them 1,000 times over. Now, they were about to intervene in another Deathworld struggle, not with medicine and food, but with a vessel designed for war. The irony wasn't lost on her. "Ship," she addressed the AI, "initiate mission-specific personnel assessment. I need a team of specialists with experience in high-gravity caustic atmosphere and radiation tolerance." "Processing, Captain," the ship's voice responded. "Personnel files accessed. Recommend Lieutenant Raj Singh, specialized in desert survival and engineering. Dr. Mei Tanaka, xenobiologist with focus on extreme environment adaptations. Sergeant Dominic Torres, atmospheric diving and acid-resistant operations. And communications specialist Zara Okafor, with background in non-standard sentient interfaces." Elena nodded. All 4 had proven themselves in environments that would kill most humans within minutes. For a mission to Vexus, they would need every edge they could get. "Assemble them in tactical planning in 1 hour, and prepare the Mantis drop shuttles for Deathworld configuration." "Yes, Captain. Should I inform the crew of our destination?" Elena gazed out at the stars beyond the view screen. "Tell them we're headed to Hell. They should pack accordingly." The UES Havoc departed Earth orbit, 18 minutes ahead of schedule, its plasma drives flaring blue-white against the darkness. The journey to the Vexus system would take 13 days at maximum sustainable FTL, faster than any relief ship could manage, but still precious time with the Crawl blockade already in place. Elena used the transit time to prepare her crew. Unlike the elegant, environmentally controlled vessels of most Council species, the Havoc's interior was utilitarian and robust. Humans had learned early in their space exploration that comfort was secondary to survival. In the ship's largest training bay, reconfigured to simulate Vexus conditions, the landing team suffered through daily exposure drills. Caustic fog burned their lungs as they practiced equipment assembly in triple Earth gravity. Electromagnetic pulses randomly disabled their gear, forcing improvisation. Those who failed to adapt quickly enough were replaced without sentiment. On the 10th day of transit, Elena called her senior officers to the command deck. Lieutenant Commander Alexei Volkov, her first officer, had arranged a comprehensive tactical display of the Vexus system. Current intelligence shows 7 crawl vessels in blockade formation. Volkov reported, his Russian accent still evident despite years of speech standardization training. Their cruiser-class ships here, and here with faster interceptors, spread in a defensive screen. Lieutenant Raj Singh, a compact man with keen eyes, and hands that never seemed to stop moving, stepped forward. The blockade has gaps, he observed, specifically in the upper ionosphere quadrants, where Vexus's radiation belt is strongest. Deliberate, Elena noted. The Krull exoskeletons are vulnerable to certain radiation wavelengths. They're avoiding those sectors. Dr. Tanaka nodded. The xenobiologist had spent most of the journey analyzing what little data they had on Vexus biology. It makes sense. The Vex have likely evolved significant radiation tolerance. Their genetic structure must be remarkably stable. Which means, Elena continued, we have a potential insertion window. The Havoc's shielding can withstand the radiation long enough for us to deploy through the gap. The Krull will detect us well before we reach insertion range, Volkov cautioned. Not necessarily. Elena turned to her weapons officer. Lieutenant Hayes, prepare a modified Phantom protocol. I want us running silent, 3 light minutes out with full signature masking. The Havoc may not be invisible, but we can make ourselves look like a much smaller vessel, perhaps a damaged transport, that poses no threat. Hayes smiled grimly. They'll be looking for a relief ship anyway. We can play the part until we're in strike position. Once we're in system, Elena continued, we'll need to make contact with the Vex leadership immediately. Dr. Tanaka, you've studied their communications. May brought up a series of waveform analyses on the tactical display. The Vex use an unusual quantum frequency modulation. It's erratic by our standards, but I believe it mimics the electromagnetic patterns of their storms. I've programmed translation algorithms, but establishing trust will be challenging. Their experience with off-worlders is limited primarily to the Krull attempts to subjugate them. Then we'll need to differentiate ourselves quickly, Elena said. Not as saviors, but as equals, warriors meeting warriors. The room fell silent as her words hung in the air. It was a subtle but significant departure from standard council protocol, which positioned advanced civilizations as benevolent providers to developing worlds. Humans, having been on the receiving end of such condescension when they first joined the galactic community, knew better. Captain, Volkov said finally, the Council expects us to evacuate Vex leadership and scientists if the situation deteriorates. They've allocated refugee processing stations in the Proxima system. The Council expects many things, Commander. Our priority is ensuring the Vex and their technology don't fall under Krull control. If that means evacuation, so be it. But I suspect a people who have survived on a death world won't abandon their home without a fight. She surveyed her officers. Any other concerns? Communications specialist Zara Okafor cleared her throat. The youngest senior officer aboard, her expertise in alien thought patterns had proven invaluable on previous missions. Captain, we should consider how we present ourselves. The Vex communicate not just through language, but through demonstration of capability. Their cultural framework values proven resilience over promised assistance. Meaning they won't respect us until they see us survive what they survive. Any communication should be preceded by a demonstration that we can endure their environment without special accommodations. Elena nodded thoughtfully. Arrange environmental suits for the landing party that appear minimal, but provide essential protection. I want the Vex to see us as equals, not fragile outsiders. As the meeting adjourned, Lieutenant Singh lingered. Captain, a word. When the others had gone, he approached the tactical display, recalling the geological surveys of Vexus. These formations near the distress signal origin, they're riddled with caverns, natural shelters from the surface conditions. You're thinking the xenometal might be located there. Singh nodded. If I were developing a revolutionary technology on a hostile world, I'd want it shielded from the elements. These caverns offer that protection, plus natural camouflage from orbital scans. Good thinking, Lieutenant. Prepare a covert reconnaissance plan for those coordinates as our secondary objective after initial contact. Yes, Captain. He hesitated. There's something else. The radiation belt we'll be using for cover, it's not just harmful to the Krull. It will degrade our systems too, particularly the drop shuttle's guidance systems. Can you compensate? Partially, but we'll need manual piloting for the final approach. I'd like to volunteer. Elena studied him. Singh had grown up in the radioactive wastes of what had once been called Pakistan, before the water wars had redrawn Earth's political boundaries. Few humans could navigate radiation storms by sight alone, but he was one of them. Approved. But take Sergeant Torres as your co-pilot. If things go wrong, I want our best atmospheric specialist with you. As Singh left, Elena turned back to the display of Vexus, a world of purple skies and burning rain where lightning storms could melt standard alloys, and the native life had evolved metallic exoskeletons to survive. A world, not unlike Earth had been before centuries of terraforming had tamed its wilder aspects. A world worth fighting for. 3 days later, the UES Havoc dropped out of FTL at the calculated emergence point, its sensors immediately sweeping the system for threats. The Vexus star burned an angry red on the view screen, casting its crimson light across the command deck. "Crawl vessels detected," announced the tactical officer. 7 ships in blockade formation around Vexus, plus what appears to be a command vessel, holding position at the system's edge. Elena studied the tactical overlay. As expected. Initiate Phantom Protocol. Reconfigure our signature to match a Council medical frigate. Minimal weapon signature, reduced engine output. Phantom Protocol engaged Captain. Signature masking at 87% effectiveness. It'll have to do. Helm set course for the radiation gap in the blockade. Lieutenant Singh, prepare your drop team. As the Havoc edged toward Vexus, Elena opened a secure channel to her first officer. "Commander Volkov, while I'm planetside with the contact team, the ship is yours. If the Crawl detect our true nature and move to intercept, don't engage unless absolutely necessary. Our primary advantage is surprise, and I'd prefer to keep it that way as long as possible." "Understood, Captain. And if the Vex prove hostile?" "Then extract us if you can, but your priority remains keeping the Havoc and its capabilities out of enemy hands, whether those enemies are Crawl or Vex." The unspoken implication hung between them. If necessary, Volkov would leave them behind, rather than risk the ship. It was standard procedure for missions in hostile territory, but that didn't make it any easier to acknowledge. "We'll be monitoring your signal, Captain. Good hunting." In the shuttle bay, Elena found her landing team making final preparations. Dr. Tanaka was adjusting her environment suit, its transparent sections, revealing the reinforced exoskeleton, beneath technology, developed for humans, working in Earth's most punishing environments. "Our suits will protect us from the worst of it," Tanaka explained, as Elena approached, but not indefinitely. The atmospheric composition of Vexus includes sulfuric acid compounds and radioactive particles that will eventually penetrate even our best materials. "How long do we have?" 4 hours at most before degradation becomes critical. Less if we encounter heavy storms. Elena nodded. It would be enough time for initial contact. "Everyone clear on the mission parameters. We locate the Vex leadership, establish communication, and assess their situation firsthand. Secondary objective is reconnaissance of potential xenometal production facilities. We are not to reveal our knowledge of xenometal, unless absolutely necessary for securing an alliance." Lieutenant Singh, already strapped into the pilot's seat of the Mantis shuttle, gave a thumbs up. "Radiation interference is already affecting long-range scans. Once we're in the atmosphere, we'll be navigating primarily by visual and thermal." "The interference works both ways," Elena noted. "It should help mask our approach from the Crawl sensors." As the team boarded, Elena took a final look at the shuttle bay. The sleek black Mantis, with its articulated landing gear and reinforced hull, resembled the predatory insect it was named for. It was built not for comfort, but for survival, in environments that should by all rights kill its occupants instantly. Much like humans themselves. "Havoc Command, this is Drop Team." Singh's voice came through as the shuttle's engines ignited. "Ready for deployment." "Drop Team, you are clear for launch," responded Volkov. "Radiation belt entry in 2 minutes. Maintain communication discipline once inside the atmosphere." The bay doors slid open, revealing the red star and the looming dark mass of Vexus beyond. With a barely perceptible lurch, the Mantis detached from its docking clamps and glided into space, its thrusters flaring briefly before it began its controlled fall toward the planet. Elena felt the familiar pressure in her chest as the shuttle accelerated. Through the viewport, she watched as the blackness of space gave way to the purple-tinged upper atmosphere of Vexus. Static crackled across their communications as they entered the radiation belt. "Radiation levels rising," announced Tanaka, eyes fixed on her instruments. "Hull integrity holding." Singh's hands moved across the manual controls with practiced precision. Unlike most modern vessels, the Mantis included analog backup systems specifically for situations where digital interfaces might fail. It was another example of humanity's pragmatic approach to survival: redundancy over elegance, functionality over form. The shuttle shuddered as it hit the denser layers of atmosphere. Outside, the purple gave way to angry swirls of crimson and black as they passed through a storm system. Lightning flashed around the massive bolts that dwarfed anything seen on Earth. "Atmospheric turbulence increasing," Singh reported calmly. "Compensating." A particularly violent bolt struck near the shuttle, momentarily overloading its systems. The lights flickered, and several warning indicators flashed across the control panel. "Port stabilizer damaged," Singh announced, his voice still steady despite the crisis. Switching to manual trim control. The shuttle lurched sideways before he brought it back under control, the deck tilting at an alarming angle. Elena gripped her restraints, but said nothing. Showing concern would only distract him. They broke through the storm layer into what passed for clear air on Vexus, a hazy crimson fog that limited visibility to a few hundred meters. Below, they caught glimpses of the surface jagged rock formations, interspersed with pools of what appeared to be liquid metal reflecting the lightning above. "I've got thermal signatures," announced Sergeant Torres, monitoring the sensor array. "Artificial structures at bearing 047, approximately 12 kilometers from our current position." "The distress signal origin," confirmed Zara Okafor. "I'm detecting communication activity, same quantum frequency patterns we observed from orbit." Elena made a decision. "Take us in, Lieutenant. Minimal altitude, use the terrain for cover. If there are crawl forces on the surface, I'd prefer to avoid them until we've made contact with the Vex." The shuttle skimmed over the broken landscape, weaving between towering rock spires. Occasionally, globules of acidic rain struck the viewport, leaving smoking trails before the shuttle's protective field neutralized them. "There," Singh said, suddenly adjusting their course. Ahead, partially concealed within a massive canyon, stood what could only be a settlement. Unlike the elegant spires favored by most council species, Vex architecture was brutalist and practical geometric structures, built directly into the cliff faces, connected by enclosed bridges that spanned the canyon. The entire complex was shielded by what appeared to be an energy field that diverted the worst of the storms. "Defense systems," noted Torres, highlighting several projections on the canyon walls. "Energy weapons similar to plasma technology, but with some modifications. They're active but not currently targeting us." "They see us," Elena stated. "Specialist Okafor, send the contact protocol we prepared. Let's see if they're willing to talk before they decide to shoot." Okafor transmitted the carefully crafted message, a mathematical sequence that should be recognizable across cultural barriers, followed by simplified visuals identifying them as non-crawl visitors. For several tense moments, there was no response. Then, a section of the energy shield flickered, creating an opening just large enough for the shuttle to pass through. "Invitation accepted," Singh observed dryly. "Or trap set," countered Volkov, through the now staticky comlink. "Proceed with caution, drop team." Acknowledged," Elena responded. "Maintain position and prepare extraction protocols if necessary." She turned to her team. "Weapons concealed but accessible. Dr. Tanaka, you'll take point on communication once we've established basic trust. Remember, we're here as potential allies, not saviors." Singh guided the shuttle through the shield opening which sealed behind them as soon as they passed. Inside the canyon, the environment was marginally less hostile, the acid rain and radiation partially blocked by the natural rock formations and artificial shields. He set the shuttle down on a flat platform that extended from one of the cliff-integrated structures. As the engines powered down, they got their first clear view of the Vex. A delegation had assembled on the platform, 6 figures standing in precise formation. They were tall, easily 7 feet in height, with bodies that seemed to blend biological and mechanical components. Their outer layers resembled burnished metal, but it moved with an organic fluidity that no standard alloy could achieve. Each Vex had 4 upper limbs and 2 lower ones, with what appeared to be specialized tools integrated into various appendages. Their heads were elongated with sensory organs, arranged in patterns unfamiliar to human biology. Most striking were their eyes, 3 on each side of their head, glowing with an inner light that shifted between purple and blue. They wore no obvious clothing or armor, but portions of their bodies were adorned with what appeared to be circuit-like patterns that pulsed with energy. "Xenometal," whispered Tanaka in awe. "It's not just technology they've developed, it's integrated into their biology." Elena gave her a warning glance before activating the shuttle's external speakers. "Prepare for atmospheric equalization. Once pressure is stable, we'll disembark. Remember your environmental training." The team performed final checks on their suits, designed to appear minimalist, while actually providing crucial protection. Elena had insisted on transparency in key sections, allowing the Vex to see their human faces. It was a calculated risk, but establishing trust required vulnerability. When the shuttle's sensors confirmed that the external atmosphere wouldn't immediately kill them, Elena activated the hatch. It hissed open, releasing a small cloud of vapor as the different air compositions met. She stepped out first as protocol demanded. The gravity hit her immediately nearly twice. Earth standard, making each movement require conscious effort. The air, even filtered through her suit, carried a metallic tang that burned the back of her throat. The Vex delegation remained motionless as the humans descended from the shuttle. Only when all 5 team members stood on the platform did the central figure step forward. Up close, the integration of metal and flesh was even more apparent, not crude cybernetics, but a seamless blending that suggested the metal was somehow alive. The Vex leader raised its upper right limb in what might have been a greeting. From an opening in its chest, not a mouth, Elena noted, came a series of sounds, clicks, whirs, and modulated tones that no human vocal cord could produce. Okafor activated her translation matrix designed based on the intercepted communications. After a moment, approximated words emerged from her device. "You are not Crawl. You are not Council. You came through Fire Sky. Explain purpose." Elena stepped forward, maintaining the precise distance that Okafor had calculated would appear respectful without submissive. "I am Captain Elena Marks of the United Earthship Havoc. We received your distress signal and have come to discuss alliance against our common enemy." The translation matrix converted her words into the Vex sound pattern, which echoed strangely in the canyon. The leader's eyelights pulsed more rapidly. "Alliance requires equivalence. You survive in protective shell, not equivalent." Elena had anticipated this. Without breaking eye contact with the Vex leader, she reached up and deactivated her helmet seal. The team had agreed this demonstration would be necessary, though not without risk. Her helmet retracted, exposing her face to the caustic atmosphere of Vexus. The burning sensation was immediate, like inhaling superheated sand. Her eyes watered, and she felt her skin tighten as the acid components in the air began their work. But she had trained for this, spending hours in the ship's simulation chamber, acclimating to increasingly hostile conditions. She took one deliberate breath, then another, forcing herself not to cough as the acidic air scorched her lungs. 20 seconds passed, long enough to make her point, without risking permanent damage. Only then did she reactivate her helmet seal. The Vex delegation's posture changed subtly. The leader's eyelights shifted to a deeper blue, and its metal organic limbs relaxed from their rigid position. You endure pain. Interesting. The translation came through clearer now, as if the Vex had adjusted its speech patterns to facilitate understanding. What is United Earth? Earth is our home world, Elena explained. Like Vexus, it is a planet that challenges its inhabitants. We evolved in harsh conditions, not identical to yours, but similarly demanding. Our people understand survival in ways that many council species do not. This seemed to register with the Vex leader. Its upper limbs made a complex gesture that the translation matrix couldn't interpret, but the intent became clear as the leader turned and indicated they should follow. I am Commander Vox of the Unified Vex Collective. You will speak with the Council of Survivors. As they were led into the cliff structure, Elena activated her sub-vocal communicator. Singh Torres maintains shuttle readiness. Dr. Tanaka and Specialist Okafor with me. Keep environmental sensors active and record everything. The interior of the Vex structure was a marvel of pragmatic engineering. What had appeared brutal and utilitarian from outside revealed itself as a complex network of interconnected chambers, each serving specific functions. The walls themselves seemed alive, pulsing with the same circuit-like patterns they had observed on the Vex bodies. The entire structure is integrated with xenometal. Tanaka whispered her scientific curiosity, overwhelming caution. It's responding to their presence, perhaps, even their thoughts. Commander Vox led them to a central chamber, where 5 more Vex awaited, distinguished from their escort by more elaborate metal-organic integrations. They were arranged in a semicircle around a holographic display, showing the Vex's system, with the crawl blockade clearly visible. The pain-enduring humans come seeking alliance, Vox announced. They bring a vessel called Havoc. One of the council members stepped forward, its body configuration suggesting greater age, the xenometal integrations, more extensive, covering nearly its entire form. I am Elder Thex, the translation rendered. Your arrival is unexpected. The Galactic Council promised humanitarian vessels, not warriors. Elena chose her words carefully. The Council's understanding of your needs is limited by their experience. They see a world in distress and assume you require rescue. We recognize a civilization fighting for its sovereignty. We offer partnership, not salvation. Elder Thex's eyelights pulsed rapidly as it processed her words. Partnership requires trust. Trust requires truth. Your vessel hides beyond our scanning range. Why? To avoid crawl detection, Elena answered honestly. The Havoc is a warship, not a relief vessel. If the Crawl knew its capabilities, they would direct their full forces against it before we could establish contact with you. This admission seemed to intrigue, rather than alarm the Vex Council. They exchanged a series of rapid communications in their native tongue, too complex for the translation matrix to follow. Finally, Elder Thex spoke again. What do humans want from this partnership? Here was the critical juncture. Elena needed to secure access to xenometal technology without revealing how much they already knew about it. The Crawl threaten many worlds, not just Vexus. Earth seeks allies who understand survival, who can help us develop technologies to protect independent civilizations from those who would conquer them. She gestured to the remarkable structure around them. Your integration of biological and technological systems is unlike anything we've encountered. Such innovation could benefit both our peoples. Elder Thex's metallic form shifted plates, realigning in what might have been the Vex equivalent of thoughtful consideration. The Crawl come for what you observe, the living metal. They have tried 7 times to take it by force. Each time we have repelled them. But their forces grow stronger, their weapons more precise. Why does this blockade differ from previous attacks? Elena asked. They have new technology, energy-dampening fields that weaken our defenses. They learned from previous failures. Thex indicated the holographic display zooming in on one of the larger Crawl vessels. This ship carries a weapon that can disrupt the molecular stability of xenometal. 3 surface installations have already been destroyed by orbital strikes. Dr. Tanaka stepped forward, unable to contain herself. Your people appear to have integrated the xenometal into your biological systems. Does this weapon pose a direct threat to your population? The question was bold, acknowledging their observations, without revealing prior intelligence. Elder Thex's response was to raise one limb, which transformed before their eyes, metal, flowing like liquid to reshape itself into a complex tool. We do not simply use the living metal. We commune with it. It chooses to bond with us, as we have proven worthy, through generations of survival. The elder's tone hardened. The crawl would enslave it, force it to serve without consent. This we cannot allow. Elena saw her opening. Earth understands the difference between partnership and exploitation. We've faced species who sought to conquer, rather than collaborate. She straightened, fighting against Vexus's punishing gravity. We propose a joint operation, your knowledge of xenometal, and our military capabilities combined against the crawl blockade. Specifics, demanded another council member stepping forward. This one's metal integrations seemed more weapon-oriented, with limbs configured for what appeared to be combat functions. The Havoc carries advanced weaponry and can maneuver through the radiation belt that the crawl avoid. We can create a diversion, while your forces target their command vessel, specifically the molecular disruption weapon you mentioned. The military-configured Vex made a sound that the translation matrix rendered as skeptical. Your single vessel against 8 crawl ships, the mathematics of survival, do not favor such action. Elena allowed herself a small smile. Humans specialize in defying unfavorable mathematics. But you're right, direct confrontation would be unwise. Instead, we propose a precision strike targeting key vulnerabilities while minimizing our exposure. She turned to Commander Vox. Your distress signal indicated you have remaining orbital capabilities. Do you maintain any defense platforms or smaller vessels? 3 orbital platforms remain functional, though at reduced capacity, due to the dampening fields. 2 atmospheric fighters are operational, but lack the capability to breach the blockade. That may be enough, Elena said. With your permission, I'd like to bring my tactical officer and engineer to discuss a coordinated strategy. The council conferred briefly before Elder Thex responded. Acceptable, but before we proceed further, you must understand what you defend. Follow. The Elder led them deeper into the complex through corridors, where the walls themselves seemed to react to their presence, subtle patterns of light following their movements. They descended via a platform that moved without any visible mechanism, finally arriving at a massive chamber carved directly into the planet's bedrock. What they saw there made even Dr. Tanaka, who had theorized extensively about xenometal's properties, gasp audibly. The chamber housed what could only be described as a forest of metal. Towering structures resembling trees stretched toward the distant ceiling, their surfaces rippling with the same circuit-like patterns they had observed throughout the complex. But these patterns were more complex, more vibrant, shifting and changing, as if communicating in some visual language beyond human comprehension. Between the metallic trees flowed streams of liquid that glowed with an inner light, pooling in reservoirs where smaller xenometal formations were emerging, growing visibly even as they watched. Vex moved among these formations, their bodies seeming to resonate with the surrounding metal, creating harmonic patterns of light between them. The Heart Garden, Elder Thex explained. Here new xenometal is born. Here our children come to form their first communion. Here the collective memory of our civilization is preserved. It's alive, Tanaka whispered. Truly alive, not just reactive. It has a life cycle, reproduction, possibly even consciousness. It remembers, confirmed Elder Thex. All who have survived on Vexus, all who have proven worthy of communion. The living metal carries their knowledge, their experience. The Elder turned to face Elena directly. If the Crawl obtain this, they will not simply possess a technology. They will enslave a sentient species and use its capabilities to dominate the galaxy. The implications were staggering. Earth had sent the Havoc to secure advanced technology, not to intervene in what amounted to attempted genocide. Elena's mission parameters suddenly seemed woefully inadequate for the reality they faced. "This changes things," she acknowledged. "Elder Thex, I need to communicate this information to my ship. The nature of our assistance must adapt to this understanding. You reconsider your alliance." The Elder's tone carried a note of warning. "No," Elena said firmly. "I strengthen my commitment to it. But what you've shown us goes beyond military strategy. This is about the survival of a unique consciousness. My authorities need to understand that." After a moment of consideration, Thex gestured consent. As Elena activated her secure communicator to contact the Havoc, she knew that the mission had just become infinitely more complex and more crucial. They weren't simply securing a strategic resource. They were preventing the enslavement of a sentient life form. The Galactic Council, with its bureaucratic approach to interspecies relations, would be paralyzed by such a revelation. But humans, who had evolved on a world that constantly tried to kill them, understood that sometimes survival required immediate action, rather than endless deliberation. Elena's transmission to the Havoc was necessarily brief and encoded. Commander Volkov's response was equally concise. The Kral blockade had begun to shift position with 2 vessels breaking formation to approach the radiation belt. They had perhaps hours before their presence was discovered. Returning to the council chamber, Elena found the Vex leaders engaged in what appeared to be direct neural communication, their metal integrations pulsing in synchronized patterns. They disengaged as she entered, turning their attention to her. "Your ship reports Kral movement," stated Commander Vox. It wasn't a question. "Yes, they're repositioning to investigate the radiation belt. We have limited time." "Then we must accelerate our planning," Elder Thex declared. "Vox will coordinate with your tactical team. But there is another matter we must address." The Elder's form shifted, revealing previously concealed components. "The weapon that threatens the xenometal requires a specific countermeasure. We possess the knowledge but lack the delivery system. Your ship must carry it." Dr. Tanaka stepped forward. "What kind of countermeasure?" "The living metal can adapt to resist the disruption frequency, but it must be present at the source of the attack. A seed cluster, properly synchronized, could neutralize the weapon and potentially convert its energy matrix." Elena understood immediately. "You want us to transport xenometal directly onto the Kral command vessel?" "Precisely. A small amount specially prepared. It would require a precision delivery system and a carrier capable of surviving both our atmosphere and space." "A suicide mission," Elena stated bluntly. Elder Thex's eyelights dimmed slightly. "We have lost many to protect the Heart Garden. We are prepared to lose more." "That won't be necessary," Elena said, an idea forming. "Human military doctrine includes precision payload delivery without sacrificing personnel. We have systems designed exactly for this purpose." The discussion that followed was intensive, technical, and occasionally heated. The Vex, despite their advanced biotechnology, had focused their development on defensive rather than offensive systems. The Havoc, conversely, was built primarily as a strike vessel with multiple options for delivering a precisely targeted payload. Lieutenant Singh, joining them via communicator, proposed modifying one of the Mantis shuttle's missile tubes to carry the xenometal seed cluster. The missiles themselves were designed to penetrate advanced shielding through a combination of phase-shifting technology and kinetic impact, making them ideal delivery vehicles. "The challenge," Singh explained, "will be programming the targeting parameters to identify the specific energy signature of the disruption weapon. Our systems aren't calibrated for Kral technology." "This can be overcome," Commander Vox asserted. "We have detailed scans from previous encounters. The weapon emits a distinctive radiation pattern, even when dormant." As they finalized the technical details, Elena received another communication from the Havoc. The Kral vessels had altered course again, now moving deliberately toward the radiation gap they had used for insertion. Discovery was imminent. "We need to accelerate our timeline," she announced. "How quickly can the Xenometal seed cluster be prepared?" "It is already being synchronized," Elderthex replied. "But it requires careful handling. The living metal must consent to its role." Elena blinked, still, adjusting to the concept of technology that required consent. "How long?" "One planetary rotation cycle, approximately 17 of your Earth hours." "Too long. The Crawl would locate the Havoc well before then. They needed a diversion." "Commander Vox, you mentioned orbital defense platforms. Are they capable of targeted strikes against Crawl vessels?" "Limited capability remains. They cannot penetrate Crawl shields directly, but they can create disturbances in specific sectors." "That's enough." Elena activated the tactical display. "If your platforms can generate sufficient electromagnetic interference here and here," she indicated points on opposite sides of the planetary orbit, "it might appear as system-wide instability rather than deliberate action. The Crawl would be forced to investigate, dividing their attention." Commander Vox considered the strategy. "Feasible. The platforms can be programmed for randomized emission patterns that would mask their true purpose." Meanwhile, Elena continued, "The Havoc will relocate to this position behind Vexus's largest moon. The radiation shadow should help conceal our signature while keeping us close enough for rapid deployment once the seed cluster is ready." The plan took shape quickly after that. The Vex would begin preparations, immediately synchronizing a Xenometal seed cluster to target the Crawl's molecular disruption weapon. The defense platforms would create a coordinated series of electromagnetic disturbances to divide the blockade's attention. When the moment was right, the Havoc would launch a precision strike against the Crawl command vessel, delivering the seed cluster directly to the weapon system. As the meeting concluded, Elderthex approached Elena privately. "There is something you should understand, Captain Marks. The Xenometal seed we are preparing is more than a countermeasure. If successfully delivered, it will not merely neutralize the weapon." "What will it do?" "It will begin integration with the Crawl vessel systems, a form of conversion. The living metal will attempt to communicate with the ship itself to bring it into communion." Elena frowned. "You're talking about assimilation, taking control of their technology." "Not control, communion. The distinction is crucial. The living metal does not seek to dominate, only to connect. Whether that connection leads to harmony or conflict depends on the recipient." The implications were both fascinating and troubling. "Does the Galactic Council understand this aspect of Xenometal?" "They understand only what serves their purposes," Elderthex replied. "They see a resource to be studied, cataloged, perhaps exploited. They do not comprehend communion because they have never needed to evolve under conditions that demand such deep integration of biology and technology. Like humans and Vex have," Elena noted. "Indeed. This is why your arrival, rather than a council diplomatic vessel, may prove fortunate. You recognize the value of adaptation, of becoming one with the forces that might otherwise destroy you." The Elder's eyelights pulsed in what Elena was beginning to recognize as a gesture of emphasis. This is the fundamental difference between survivors and those who merely exist in favorable conditions. Before Elena could respond, her communicator activated with an urgent signal from the Havoc. "Captain, Crawl vessels are converging on our previous position," Volkov reported. "They've detected our insertion trail. Estimate 30 minutes before they determine our actual location." "Understood. Initiate relocation as planned. We're returning to the shuttle now." She turned to Elderthex. "We need to move quickly. Can you have a representative ready to accompany us to coordinate the final stages? Commander Vox will join your vessel. His communion with the Heart Garden is particularly strong. He will ensure the seed cluster remains viable during transport." As they made their way back to the landing platform, Elena briefed Singh and Torres on the accelerated timeline. The Mantis shuttle would need immediate modifications to accommodate both the Xenometal payload and a Vex passenger. Commander Vox met them at the shuttle, his form, now encased in what appeared to be a more extensive xenometal integration. Portions of his body glowed, with the same pulsing patterns they had observed in the Heart Garden. "The seed cluster is prepared," he announced. "It requires continuous communion during transit to maintain synchronization." Dr. Tanaka assisted in configuring a section of the shuttle for Vox, ensuring that the electromagnetic fields necessary for the xenometal's stability wouldn't interfere with the vessel's navigation systems. Meanwhile, Singh and Torres completed the modifications to the missile tube, creating a specialized delivery system for their unique payload. As they prepared for departure, Elena took a final moment to address Elder Thex. "When this is over, assuming we're successful, Earth will want to establish a more formal alliance with Vexus. The xenometal technology will remain on Vexus," the Elder interrupted firmly. "But communion may be possible for those who prove worthy of it, as you have begun to do." It was not the unlimited access to revolutionary technology that Earth Command had hoped for, but it was a start, a recognition of mutual respect that could form the foundation for a genuine partnership. The journey back to the Havoc was tense, with Singh navigating through increasingly unstable atmospheric conditions. The Vex defense platforms had begun their electromagnetic disruption, creating artificial storm systems that helped mask their departure, but also made piloting hazardous. Commander Vox sat motionless in his adapted compartment, his form pulsing with energy as he maintained communion with the seed cluster. Occasionally, the xenometal components of his body would shift and reconfigure, responding to some internal communication beyond human perception. Dr. Tanaka couldn't resist the opportunity to observe this process firsthand. "Commander Vox, may I ask how you experience communion with the living metal? Is it similar to what humans would call a neural interface?" Vox's eyelights shifted toward her. "It is not interface. Interface implies separation. Communion is becoming. The boundaries between self and other dissolve. Knowledge flows without translation. A form of collective consciousness, then. Individuality remains, but it exists within a greater whole. You have nothing comparable." Tanaka considered this. Some Earth philosophies describe similar concepts, and certain neural synchronization technologies approach this state, but nothing as complete as what you describe. "Perhaps one day," Vox said, his translation carrying a note that might have been hope. "If your people prove compatible." The shuttle broke through Vexus's upper atmosphere into the relative calm of space. Immediately, Singh activated the stealth systems, minimizing their energy signature, as they navigated toward the Havoc's new position behind Vexus's largest moon. The destroyer's dark hull was barely visible against the backdrop of space, its running lights dimmed to minimal levels. Only when they were within 100 meters did the shuttle bay doors slide open, revealing the illuminated interior. Commander Volkov met them as they disembarked, his expression grim. "Captain, the situation has escalated. The Kral command vessel has deployed what appear to be atmospheric insertion craft. They're preparing for a surface assault." Elena processed this new development quickly. "They've found the Heart Garden location." "Unknown, but they're concentrating forces in the sector containing the Vex capital complex." Time frame. "Insertion craft will reach the atmosphere in approximately 40 minutes. Elena turned to Commander Vox, who had emerged from the shuttle. His impressive height and unusual composition drawing stares from the human crew members who hadn't yet encountered a Vex. "Your defense systems can handle atmospheric craft." "To a point, but if multiple insertion vessels penetrate our shields simultaneously, some will reach the surface. Then we need to prevent that," Elena decided. "Commander Volkov, prepare for immediate engagement. All weapon systems on standby, target the insertion craft first, then provide cover for our strike against the command vessel. That will reveal our position and capabilities," Volkov cautioned. "Can't be helped. The timeline has collapsed." She turned to Lieutenant Singh. "Is the delivery system for the seed cluster ready?" "Final calibrations underway, Captain. 10 minutes to completion." "You have 5. Specialist Okafor, establish a secure channel to the Vex defense grid. We need to coordinate our attack with their platform disruptions for maximum effect. As the crew rushed to battle stations, Elena led Commander Vox to the tactical planning room, where a three-dimensional representation of the Vexus system showed the current positions of all vessels. The Kral command ship remains here, she indicated, directing the blockade. Their insertion craft have deployed from these three cruisers. Our priority is twofold: prevent those craft from reaching your surface installations, and deliver the seed cluster to neutralize their molecular disruption weapon. Vox studied the display, his metallic appendages occasionally reaching out to interact with the holographic elements, leaving trails of light where they passed through the projections. Their command vessel will be heavily shielded. A direct approach would fail. Agreed. That's why we're not taking a direct approach. Elena manipulated the display to highlight a specific vector. We'll use the electromagnetic disruption from your defense platforms to mask our initial movement. The Havoc will emerge from behind the moon at full acceleration, targeting the insertion craft first. This will alert the command vessel to your presence. Yes, but they'll be expecting us to target their weapon systems directly. Instead, we'll appear to be making a standard defensive run, focusing on protecting the planet. Elena highlighted a different trajectory. That's when we launch our actual strike package, low signature, minimally powered until final approach. It should register as debris from the primary engagement. Vox's eyelights pulsed rapidly. Deception. Effective against Kral tactical protocols. Their systems prioritize active threats, often ignoring passive objects. Exactly. Your seed cluster will be delivered via this passive projectile designed to penetrate their shields through phase shifting. By the time they recognize it as a threat, it will already be inside their defenses. The Vex commander made a gesture that the translation matrix rendered as approval. Your species thinks strategically under pressure. This is uncommon among council races. Pressure is where humans perform best, Elena replied. It's in our evolutionary history. The ship's alert system sounded, indicating battle stations. On the tactical display, the Kral insertion craft had begun their approach to Vexus's atmosphere. It's time, Elena said. Let's show the Kral what happens when they threaten a death world. The bridge of the UES Havoc hummed with controlled tension as Elena took her command chair. Status reports flowed in from all departments: weapon systems, charged engines at full capacity, special payload, armed and ready. Emergence from lunar shadow in 30 seconds, announced the navigation officer. Kral insertion craft maintaining course toward Vexus atmosphere. Elena nodded to Commander Vox, who had taken position beside her. Signal your defense platforms. Initiate maximum disruption pattern now. Throughout the Vexus system, the remaining orbital platforms activated simultaneously, releasing carefully calibrated electromagnetic pulses that created waves of interference across standard scanning frequencies. On the tactical display, the resulting distortion appeared as rippling patterns that temporarily obscured portions of space. Now, Elena ordered, full thrust attack vector Charlie 7. The Havoc's engines flared to life, propelling the destroyer from its hiding place at a velocity that would have crushed the crew without their inertial dampening systems. The sleek black vessel cut through space like a predatory shark, its weapon systems locking onto the vulnerable insertion craft. Targets acquired, reported the weapons officer. Railgun solution ready. Fire. The Havoc's primary railguns discharged, launching hypervelocity projectiles that crossed the intervening space in seconds. 3 Kral insertion craft erupted in silent explosions before their defensive systems could respond. Second wave targeting solutions confirmed. Fire. Another volley eliminated 2 more insertion craft. The remaining Kral vessels began evasive maneuvers, their formation breaking apart as they registered the unexpected threat. Kral cruisers altering course, announced the tactical officer. They're moving to intercept us. As expected. Maintain current vector. Prepare point defense systems for incoming fire. The first retaliatory strikes came from the nearest Kral cruiser energy beams that the Havoc's defensive systems largely deflected. A few struck the hull directly momentarily, overloading the shield grid in localized sections. Hull integrity at 92%, reported engineering. Shield grid reconfiguring to compensate. Elena remained focused on the tactical display. The crawl command vessel had not yet moved, but its weapon systems were powering up, including, according to their sensors, the molecular disruption device that threatened the xenometal. Launch window for package delivery in 15 seconds, Singh announced from the weapons control station. Stealth projectile armed and synchronized. Commander Vox stepped forward, his metal organic form pulsing with increasing intensity. The seed cluster senses the disruption weapon activating. It is prepared for communion. Elena gave the final command. Launch the package. A barely perceptible vibration ran through the ship as the modified missile fired from its tube, its propulsion system minimal to avoid detection. On external cameras, it appeared as little more than a dark speck against the backdrop of space, following a seemingly random trajectory that would eventually intersect with the crawl command vessel. Package away, confirmed Singh. Current detection probability at 12% and falling as battlefield debris increases. The diversionary battle intensified. Two crawl cruisers now focused their fire on the Havoc, forcing Elena to order more aggressive evasive maneuvers. The destroyer's superior agility allowed it to avoid the worst of the barrage, but they couldn't maintain this advantage indefinitely. Hull breaches on decks 4 and 7, reported damage control. Automated sealing systems engaged. Minor casualties reported in engineering section. Elena kept her attention divided between the ongoing battle and the progress of their stealth projectile, which had completed half its journey to the crawl command vessel without detection. Just a few more minutes. Captain, the tactical officer called urgently. The command vessel is powering its main drives. They're repositioning. Elena felt a spike of concern. New heading. Calculating. They appear to be establishing a firing solution on the Heart Garden coordinates. The molecular disruption weapon is charging. They had run out of time. The crawl had located the Vex's most precious resource and were preparing to destroy it from orbit. Singh, status of our package. Still on course, but the command vessel's movement has altered the intercept trajectory. Projected miss by 17 meters. Too far for the phase-shifting technology to compensate. The seed cluster would never reach its target. Commander Vox's metallic body suddenly pulsed with intense energy. I can redirect it. How? Elena demanded. Communion. The seed responds to directed thought. But I must be closer. Your ship has small craft capable of rapid deployment. Elena understood immediately. Combat pods. Single pilot vessels for short-range engagement. But the crawl would target you immediately. Not if their attention remains on your main vessel. Vox's eyelights pulsed with determination. Your diversion has created an opportunity. I must take it. Elena made a rapid tactical assessment. Their original plan had failed, but Vox's suggestion might succeed at tremendous risk to the Vex commander. Prepare a combat pod, she ordered. Lieutenant Hayes, coordinate with Commander Vox for immediate launch. As Vox was escorted to the launch bay, Elena refocused on the battle. Helm, bring us to attack Vector Epsilon 3. All weapons target the crawl command vessel's primary propulsion systems. I want their attention fully on us. The Havoc swung around in a maneuver that strained its structural integrity, bringing its full weapons array to bear on the crawl command ship. Multiple railgun projectiles and energy beams struck the larger vessel simultaneously, causing visible damage to its outer hull, but barely affecting its internal systems. They're returning fire, warned the tactical officer. Incoming heavy energy weapons. Evasive pattern Delta. Maintain weapons lock on their propulsion and weapon emplacements. Continue firing. The ship shuddered as crawl weapons found their mark. Warning indicators flashed across multiple stations. Shield grid failing in sections 3 through 7. Hull temperature approaching critical in affected areas. Elena ignored the damage reports, keeping her focus on the tactical display, where a small indicator showed Vox's combat pod launching from the Havoc's ventral bay. The tiny vessel accelerated rapidly away from the battle, its minimal profile making it difficult to track amidst the chaos. "Commander Vox is away," confirmed Hayes. "Current trajectory will intersect with the seed cluster's path in 22 seconds." The Crawl command vessel continued charging its molecular disruption weapon, now just minutes from firing range, over the Heart Garden. Their targeting systems remained locked on the planetary surface, apparently disregarding the small combat pod as insignificant. On the external cameras, Elena watched as Vox's pod reached the vicinity of the seed cluster. The Vex commander had extended portions of his metal organic form through the pod's specialized sensor array, creating a direct connection to the vacuum of space, a maneuver that would kill most species instantly. "Incredible," whispered Dr. Tanaka, who had remained on the bridge to monitor the Xenometal's response. "He's establishing direct communion through the vacuum. The radiation should destroy organic tissue, but the Xenometal is protecting him somehow." On their instruments, they detected a surge of energy from the combat pod. The seed cluster, previously on a failing trajectory, suddenly altered course with far greater precision than its minimal propulsion system should have allowed. "The seed is responding," Tanaka confirmed. "It's accelerating toward the Crawl vessel." Elena tightened her grip on the command chair's armrests. "Continue suppressive fire. Keep their defensive systems focused on us." The Havoc poured destructive energy toward the Crawl command ship, forcing it to maintain its defensive shields at maximum intensity. Meanwhile, the tiny seed cluster, now glowing with the same pulsing energy they had observed in the Heart Garden, approached from an oblique angle. "Molecular disruption weapon at 87% charge, reported tactical. Firing sequence initiating. 5 seconds to seed cluster impact," Tanaka counted down. 4, 3, 2. The seed cluster struck the Crawl vessel precisely at the emission point of the molecular disruption weapon. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then a ripple of energy spread across the Crawl ship's hull, not an explosion, but a wave of transformation. The metal itself appeared to flow circuits of light, spreading outward from the impact point. "It's working," Tanaka breathed. "The Xenometal is integrating with their systems." On the tactical display, the molecular disruption weapon's energy signature fluctuated wildly before beginning to diminish. The firing sequence aborted automatically as the weapon systems were converted by the spreading Xenometal. The Crawl vessel's response was immediate and panicked. It began firing all available weapons in random patterns, as if trying to dislodge an internal parasite. Several of its own escort vessels were struck by friendly fire. "They're losing control of their systems," Elena observed. Tactical status of Commander Vox. Combat pod maintaining position at standoff range. Life signs stable, but unusual massive energy fluctuations, consistent with what we observed in the Heart Garden. Tanaka's eyes widened. "He's still in communion with the seed cluster. He's guiding the integration process remotely." The transformation of the Crawl command vessel accelerated. Portions of its hull now pulsed with the distinctive patterns of Xenometal, spreading from the weapon emplacement to crucial control systems. Secondary explosions erupted where the integration encountered resistance, but the process continued inexorably. "Captain," called the communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the Crawl vessel. But it's not on any Crawl frequency. It's using the same quantum modulation as the Vex." "Put it through." The bridge speakers emitted a series of sounds familiar from their time on Vexus, the clicks, whirs, and tones of Vex communication. The translation matrix processed it automatically. "Communion established. Resistance significant but diminishing. Crawl command structures overwhelmed. Control systems converting." It was Vox's voice, but somehow altered, as if merged with other consciousnesses. "Commander Vox," Elena responded, "status report. The seed expands. The living metal integrates with Crawl technology. Their biological components resist, but their mechanical systems welcome communion. Estimate full conversion of primary systems within 17 minutes. Elena considered the tactical implications. The remaining Crawl vessels had ceased firing, apparently confused by the transformation of their command ship. They maintained formation, but showed signs of uncertainty, their coordinated movements becoming erratic. Commander Vox, can you direct the converted systems? Specifically, can you deactivate their weapons and propulsion? Affirmative. Weapons now under Communion control. Propulsion following. Directing remaining energy to defensive systems to protect the integration process. This was an unexpected development far beyond the simple neutralization of the molecular disruption weapon they had planned. The xenometal wasn't just disabling the crawl vessel. It was assimilating it, converting it into something new. Dr. Tanaka, analyze and advise, Elena ordered. What are we witnessing? The xenobiologist's fingers flew across her console as she processed the incoming data. It's extraordinary. The xenometal appears to be establishing a new collective entity part, crawl technology, part living metal. It's not destroying the ship. It's transforming it into a hybrid form. Similar to how the Vex have integrated xenometal into their biology, but on a technological scale. Is it dangerous to us? I don't believe so. Commander Vox is guiding the process, and the xenometal responds to the communion established in the Heart Garden. It's following Vex directives. Elena made a decision. All weapons stand down. Maintain defensive systems at full capacity, but cease offensive operations. As the Havoc's weapons fell silent, the transformed crawl vessel began broadcasting on all frequencies, a complex signal that contained elements of both Vex communication and crawl command protocols. The effect on the remaining crawl ships was immediate. They began withdrawing their formation, dissolving as individual captains made independent decisions without central coordination. They're retreating, reported Tactical. All crawl vessels are breaking orbit and accelerating toward the system's edge. Let them go, Elena ordered. Focus on recovery. Get Commander Vox's pod back aboard immediately. As the battle concluded, Elena allowed herself a moment to process what had just occurred. They had come expecting to fight a conventional space battle, perhaps to deploy a specialized countermeasure against a specific weapon. Instead, they had witnessed and facilitated a transformation that defied conventional understanding of both technology and biology. When Vox was finally brought back aboard, his form had changed. The xenometal components of his body had expanded, covering more of his structure and pulsing with increased energy. His eyelights had shifted to a deeper blue, almost purple in intensity. Commander Vox. Elena greeted him as he was escorted to the bridge. Your action saved the Heart Garden and possibly the entire Vex civilization. You have the gratitude of this vessel and Earth. Vox's metal organic form shifted slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement. The communion continues. The crawl vessel is now part of the collective. It will return to Vexus orbit once the integration is complete. You've captured an enemy warship through biological transformation. Elena stated, still adapting to the concept. This capability goes far beyond anything the Galactic Council understands about xenometal. As intended, Vox replied simply. Some knowledge is preserved for those who prove worthy. The implication was clear. The Vex had deliberately concealed the full capabilities of xenometal from the Council, revealing its true nature only to those who approached as equals rather than saviors. What happens now? Elena asked. The transformed vessel will serve as orbital defense. Its systems, now in communion with the Heart Garden, will protect Vexus from future incursions. Vox's eyelights pulsed thoughtfully. But the crawl will return with greater numbers. This is not the end of their efforts to acquire living metal. Then perhaps it's time to formalize our alliance, Elena suggested. Earth has other vessels like the Havoc, other crews who understand survival on hostile worlds. Together, we could establish a defense network that even the crawl would hesitate to challenge. Yes, Vox agreed, but not as protector and protected, as equals in communion. I believe that can be arranged. 2 days later, with the Havoc's battle damage temporarily repaired and the transformed crawl vessel now in stable orbit around Vexus, Elena returned to the surface for a formal meeting with the Vex Council of Survivors. The chamber had been reconfigured to accommodate both species comfortably, with gravity adjustments in the human section, to reduce the strain of Vexus's punishing pull. Elder Thex and the full council awaited her, along with Commander Vox, whose new form commanded even greater presence than before. Captain Elena Marks of Earth. Elder Thex began. You came to our world not as saviors, but as warriors. You recognized our struggle not as pitiful, but as worthy. For this, the Council acknowledges you as equals in survival. Elena nodded respectfully. Earth understands what it means to evolve on a world that challenges every adaptation, that punishes weakness, and rewards strength. We see in the Vex not a civilization to be pitied or protected, but one to be respected and allied with. Alliance requires exchange, Elder Thex stated. What does Earth seek from Vexus? Here was the crucial moment, the true purpose of their mission now transformed by everything they had witnessed. Earth seeks partnership in development of defensive technologies. The living metal, the xenometal, represents an approach to integration of biology and technology that we have only begun to explore. We do not ask for the metal itself, but for the opportunity to learn from those who have achieved communion with it. Elder Thex's eyelights pulsed rapidly, conveying something to the other council members beyond the translation matrix's capability. After a moment, the Elder spoke again. What Earth asks requires trust beyond diplomatic protocol. The living metal chooses its partners. It cannot be commanded or controlled. However, the Elder gestured to Commander Vox. The communion has already begun. Vox stepped forward. During the battle, when I guided the seed cluster through space, I sensed something unexpected. The humans of the Havoc, particularly you, Captain Marks, resonate with patterns the living metal recognizes. You are compatible in ways no other council species has demonstrated. Dr. Tanaka, standing beside Elena, couldn't contain her scientific curiosity. Compatible in what sense? Your adaptive responses, your neural patterns under stress, your cellular regeneration capabilities, all resemble the fundamental resonance the living metal seeks in communion partners. This is not coincidence. It is convergent evolution. Two forms of life, separated by vast distance, developing similar solutions to hostile environments. Elena absorbed this revelation. Are you suggesting that humans could potentially integrate with xenometal, as the Vex have? In time, with proper preparation and worthy individuals, yes. Elder Thex's tone carried both caution and possibility. Not all would be suitable. Only those who truly understand survival, who have been tested by extremes and emerged stronger. But the potential exists. This went far beyond the technology acquisition Earth Command had envisioned. It represented not merely an alliance, but a potential evolutionary leap, a new form of integration between humanity and a sentient, technological species. This would need to be approached with great care, Elena acknowledged. Tested thoroughly, implemented gradually, but the possibilities for both our civilizations are extraordinary. Then we are agreed, Elder Thex declared. The Vex will share knowledge of communion with worthy humans. Earth will provide defense against those who would exploit the living metal. Together, we establish not mere alliance, but shared evolution. The formal agreement that followed established the foundation for what would become known throughout the galaxy as the Deathworld Compact, an alliance of species who had evolved in the harshest environments, whose understanding of survival transcended conventional diplomatic relations. As the Havoc prepared to depart Vexus 3 days later, Elena recorded her official report to Earth Command and the Galactic Council. She chose her words carefully, aware that what had transpired would challenge fundamental assumptions about interspecies relations. To Earth Defense Command and the Galactic Council, she began, I submit this report on the UES Havoc's mission to Vexus. The Crawl blockade has been disbanded with one of their command vessels, now transformed through integration with Vex xenometal technology. This represents not merely a tactical victory, but a paradigm shift in our understanding of both the Vex civilization and the living metal they call xenometal. She paused, considering how to phrase the most crucial aspect of their discovery. It is my recommendation that Earth establish a permanent presence in the Vexus system, not as protectors, but as partners in mutual defense. The xenometal technology we encountered is not merely an advanced material or weapon system. It is a semi-sentient life form that selectively bonds with compatible biologies. Preliminary analysis suggests that humans, due to our evolutionary history on a similarly hostile world, may be uniquely suited among council species for such integration. Elena gazed out at the red star and the purple-hazed planet they would soon leave behind. The Galactic Council's approach to Vexus was fundamentally flawed. They saw a struggling civilization in need of humanitarian aid, not recognizing that the very conditions they pitied had produced a strength and innovation beyond their understanding. In sending the Havoc, rather than a relief vessel, Earth demonstrated a fundamental truth that Deathworld species intuitively grasp respect is more valuable than rescue. She straightened, feeling the weight of her words. We did not come to save them. We came to fight alongside them. And in doing so, we may have discovered not just an ally, but a new evolutionary path for humanity itself. As the transmission concluded, Elena joined her bridge crew for their departure preparations. The Havoc's hull still bore the scars of battle, but its systems were operational, its mission complete, though in a form no one could have predicted. Course laid in for Earth, Captain, reported the navigation officer. Estimated arrival in 11 days at standard FTL. Very good. Prepare for departure. Elena settled into her command chair, noting the small container secured beside it, a gift from Elder Thex, containing a minute fragment of xenometal, the first ever permitted to leave Vexus. It pulsed occasionally with inner light, responding to her proximity in ways the scientists would spend years studying. As the Havoc broke orbit, Elena reflected on the mission's unexpected outcome. They had been sent to secure a technology to establish a strategic advantage for Earth in the complex politics of the Galactic Council. Instead, they had discovered kindred spirits, another species born of hardship, whose approach to survival mirrored humanity's own stubborn persistence. The Galactic Council would struggle to comprehend what had transpired. Their bureaucratic protocols had no framework for addressing sentient technology or evolutionary partnerships. But that was their limitation, not humanity's. The stars stretched into lines as the Havoc engaged its FTL drive, leaving the Vexus system behind, but not permanently. The alliance they had forged would soon transform both civilizations in ways neither could fully anticipate. Upon returning to Earth, Elena faced an immediate storm of questions and concerns from Earth Defense Command. Admiral Santos awaited her in the orbital station's secure briefing room, his weathered face unreadable as she presented the fragment of xenometal, now safely contained in a specialized holding chamber. So let me understand this clearly, Captain, he said, leaning forward to study the pulsing material. You're saying this substance is sentient. Though semi-sentient at minimum, Elena clarified. It responds to specific neural patterns, particularly those generated under stress conditions. The Vex have achieved full integration with it, allowing a form of symbiosis that enhances both biological and technological capabilities. Dr. Tanaka, who had joined the briefing at Elena's request, activated a holographic display showing microscopic scans of the xenometal fragment. It demonstrates characteristics of both technology and biology, Admiral. Its molecular structure continually reconfigures itself, adapting to external stimuli in ways that suggest goal-directed behavior rather than simple reactivity. Admiral Santos's expression remained skeptical. And the Vex claim humans are compatible with this substance. Not just compatible, Elena emphasized. Potentially ideal partners due to our evolutionary history. Like the Vex, humans evolved on a planet that constantly tried to kill us. This apparently creates neural adaptations that the xenometal recognizes and responds to. The Admiral leaned back, fingers steepled before him. You realize the implications of what you're proposing, integration of alien biotechnology with human subjects. I do, Elena acknowledged. Which is why I'm recommending we proceed with extreme caution. Controlled laboratory studies first focusing on external interaction rather than direct integration. The Vex have offered to provide advisors who understand the communion process. Santos was silent for a long moment, studying both Elena and the contained xenometal fragment. Finally, he sighed. The Defense Council will need to be convinced, as will the Galactic Council representatives who are already demanding explanations for why a supposedly humanitarian mission resulted in the transformation of a crawl warship. With respect, Admiral, the Galactic Council's approach to Vexus was fundamentally misguided, Elena stated firmly. They treated the Vex as victims to be rescued rather than survivors to be respected. That perspective would have doomed any meaningful alliance before it began. Perhaps, Santos conceded. But politics remains politics, Captain. We'll need to frame this discovery carefully. The weeks that followed were filled with debriefings, scientific analyses, and diplomatic negotiations. The fragment of xenometal became the most studied object in Earth's advanced research facilities, its properties confounding conventional scientific categories. Most surprising was its response to human proximity. Certain individuals, particularly those with histories of survival in extreme conditions, caused the xenometal to pulse more actively, sometimes even shifting its configuration in subtle ways. Dr. Tanaka theorized that it was responding to their neural patterns, perhaps tasting their potential compatibility. 90 days after the Havoc's return, the first Vex delegation arrived on Earth. Commander Vox led a group of specialists, their metal organic forms, drawing stares wherever they went, despite efforts to prepare Earth's population for their appearance. They brought with them additional xenometal samples specifically prepared for research purposes. Elena, now promoted to Commodore, for her role in establishing the alliance, served as the delegation's primary liaison. She met them at the specialized habitat constructed in Earth's Australia outback, a location chosen for its harsh conditions that would feel somewhat familiar to the Vex. Commander Vox. She greeted him, noting that his form had evolved further since their last meeting. The xenometal integration now covered nearly his entire body, pulsing with complex patterns that seemed to respond to the environment around him. Commodore Marks. He responded, his translation device now unnecessary, as he had mastered human speech patterns. The communion sends its regards. It was a peculiar phrasing that Elena had grown accustomed to. The Vex often referred to the xenometal collectively as the communion, reinforcing its nature as a connected semi-sentient network, rather than merely an advanced material. Earth welcomes you and your specialists, she replied formally, before adding with a slight smile, though I suspect you'll find our gravity a pleasant change. Indeed, the Vex moved with notably greater ease in Earth's lighter gravitational pull, their normally deliberate movements becoming almost graceful. Your world is fascinating, Vox observed as they toured the research facility. Less immediately hostile than Vexus, yet we detect the remnants of its former dangers. The communion recognizes the patterns of adaptation in your biology, your technology, even your architecture. Dr. Tanaka, who had become the lead scientist on what was now called the Communion Project, joined them in the main laboratory. Commander Vox, we've prepared the testing chambers according to your specifications. The volunteer subjects have all been thoroughly evaluated and briefed. The volunteer subjects were a carefully selected group of individuals, primarily military personnel, with extensive experience in extreme environments, though some civilians with similar backgrounds had also been included. All had demonstrated above-average neural responsiveness to the xenometal samples. The first phase of research focused on external interaction rather than direct integration. Volunteers would enter chambers containing small, carefully contained xenometal fragments, allowing their neural patterns to interact with the material, while sophisticated equipment monitored both human and xenometal responses. Elena herself participated in these early tests, her experiences on Vexus having apparently created neural pathways that the xenometal found particularly compatible. During her sessions, the material would pulse synchronously, with her heartbeat occasionally forming patterns that mirrored her brainwave activity. "The communion recognizes you," Vox explained, after one particularly responsive session. "It remembers your actions during the battle, your decision to fight alongside us, rather than merely extract what you needed." "It has memory?" Elena asked, fascinated. "Not as you conceive it, but yes. Patterns, impressions, resonances, these transfer through the network shared among all connected xenometal. What one part experiences all eventually know." The implications were both fascinating and somewhat unsettling. If the xenometal truly formed a connected consciousness across vast distances, then the fragment they studied was not isolated, but potentially in communication with the Heart Garden on Vexus, despite being light years away. This raised security concerns for some in Earth Defense Command, but for the scientists, it represented an unprecedented opportunity to study genuinely alien cognition, a form of awareness so different from human consciousness that it required entirely new frameworks to understand. 6 months into the research program, the first milestone was reached. Sergeant Dominic Torres, who had been part of the original Havoc mission, demonstrated sustained two-way communication with a xenometal sample. Not verbal communication, but a form of direct neural interface, where his thoughts could influence the material's configuration, and impressions from the material could be perceived as sensations or concepts in his mind. "It feels curious," Torres attempted to explain after the successful session. "Not like talking to someone, more like sharing a dream where meanings flow without words. It asked about Earth, I think, about how we survived here." This breakthrough accelerated the program significantly. More volunteers achieved similar connections, each describing the experience slightly differently, but with common elements: a sense of being recognized and accepted by an intelligence that operated by entirely different rules than human cognition. At the 1-year mark, the Galactic Council finally requested direct observation of the research. Their reluctance to acknowledge the full implications of xenometal had gradually given way to cautious interest as reports of its capabilities spread through diplomatic channels. A delegation of Council representatives accompanied by scientific observers from 7 different species arrived at the Australian facility. Elena and Admiral Santos greeted them formally. Though Elena couldn't help noticing the subtle signs of discomfort many showed in Earth's higher gravity and unfamiliar atmospheric composition. Commodore Marks acknowledged the Axelian delegate, their crystalline form shimmering despite the environmental suit they wore. "The Council appreciates this opportunity to observe your research. There has been concern about the direction of human-Vex collaboration." "We understand those concerns," Elena replied diplomatically. "We hope that direct observation will provide clarity and context for our work." The demonstration that followed had been carefully planned to showcase both the scientific rigor of the research and the remarkable properties of the xenometal without revealing its full potential. Dr. Tanaka led the presentation with Commander Vox providing context from the Vex perspective. "What you are observing," Tanaka explained, as they watched a volunteer interacting with a xenometal sample, "is not merely technological interface, but a form of direct consciousness-to-consciousness communication. The xenometal responds not to specific inputs, but to the overall neural pattern of the human participant." The Council observers recorded everything, occasionally asking technical questions that revealed their struggle to fit what they were seeing into conventional scientific categories. "This appears to blur the distinction between technology and biology," noted the Phrygian scientist voice modulator, pitching higher in what might have been excitement. "Is there concern about potential contamination of human genetic material?" "The xenometal does not alter genetic sequences," Vox explained with the patience he had developed for such questions. "Communion is partnership, not assimilation. It enhances existing capabilities rather than replacing them." The observers seemed skeptical until the final demonstration, a practical application of what they had learned. Sergeant Torres, now the most experienced human in xenometal communion, demonstrated a specialized environmental suit integrated with small xenometal components. Standard environmental protection would fail within minutes in Vexus's atmosphere, Tanaka explained. This prototype, developed through our research program, can withstand those conditions for up to 24 hours, while requiring only a fraction of the power and material of conventional designs. Torres activated the suit, which seemed to flow around his body, rather than merely enclosing it. The xenometal components pulsed with light, responding to his neural commands and adjusting the suit's configuration in real time as he moved through a simulation of Vexus's hostile conditions. Even the Council observers could not hide their astonishment at this practical application. Environmental protection technology was universally valuable, and the implications for exploration of hostile worlds were immediately apparent. "This is impressive," conceded the Axelian delegate after the demonstration concluded. "Though it raises questions about the extent of xenometal integration you ultimately envision." Admiral Santos stepped forward, addressing the underlying concern directly. "Earth's position is clear. This research proceeds with full transparency and ethical oversight. We are not pursuing biological weapons or forced assimilation technology. The focus remains on mutual enhancement through consensual partnership, both between our species and with the xenometal itself." The Council delegation departed with mixed reactions, scientific fascination tempered by political caution. But their visit had accomplished what Elena and Santos had hoped, legitimizing the research in the eyes of the galactic community and establishing a framework for its continued development. As the program entered its second year, the focus shifted from basic communication to practical applications. The environmental suit was merely the first of many technologies enhanced through xenometal integration. Medical devices, communication systems, and even structural materials all benefited from the living metal's adaptive properties. More significant were the developments on Vexus itself. The transformed crawl vessel, now fully integrated into the Heart Garden communion, had become the core of an expanded orbital defense system. With the technical expertise provided by Earth engineers, the Vex had established a perimeter that successfully deterred 2 attempted crawl incursions. The alliance was proving mutually beneficial in ways that extended beyond military security. Earth scientists studying Vexus's extreme environment developed new approaches to managing Earth's own climate challenges. Vex biological adaptations inspired medical treatments for radiation exposure and toxic contamination. The exchange of knowledge flowed in both directions, enriching both civilizations. Then came the breakthrough that would forever alter humanity's place in the galaxy. Lieutenant Raj Singh, whose desert survival skills had proven crucial during the original Havoc mission, volunteered for the first experimental direct integration of xenometal with human biology. Unlike the external interfaces or equipment enhancements previously tested, this represented a true communion, similar to what the Vex had achieved, a permanent bonding of the living metal with human tissue. The procedure was conducted under the most stringent safety protocols, with both human and Vex medical teams standing by. A specialized chamber had been constructed for the integration process, filled with a carefully calibrated atmosphere that would facilitate the communion. Elena was present as an observer, along with Admiral Santos and the highest-ranking members of Earth Defense Command. The potential implications of this experiment extended far beyond scientific discovery. It represented a possible evolutionary leap for humanity. Singh lay in the central platform surrounded by instruments, monitoring every aspect of his physiology. Around him, patterns of light danced through a suspended network of xenometal filaments, responding to his neural activity, even before the integration began. "His compatibility rating is the highest we've recorded," Dr. Tanaka noted, her voice betraying both excitement and tension. "If successful communion is possible for any human, it should be possible for him." Commander Vox stood beside the chamber, his own xenometal components, pulsing in apparent communication with the material surrounding Sing. The communion recognizes his patterns. It has anticipation. This is unusual. The integration process began slowly. Unlike the violent transformation they had witnessed with the crawl vessel, this communion was carefully managed, gradual, each step monitored and controlled. Sing remained conscious, throughout providing continuous feedback on his experience. "I can feel it." His voice came through the chamber's communication system. "Not on my skin, but inside my thoughts, like a presence waiting to be invited in." The xenometal filaments began to move with greater purpose, drawing closer to Sing's body. Where they made contact, they didn't simply adhere to his skin, but seemed to phase partially through it, creating a shimmering interface that was neither fully solid nor fully incorporeal. "Neural synchronization beginning," reported one of the medical technicians. Brainwave patterns, showing harmonic resonance with xenometal energy signatures. For several tense minutes, the readings fluctuated wildly as Sing's nervous system adjusted to the unprecedented connection. His vital signs spiked, then stabilized, then spiked again, but always within the pre-established safety parameters. "It's communicating," Sing reported, his voice now carrying an unusual resonance. "Not with words, with possibilities, showing me what we could become together." The integration accelerated the xenometal, flowing more actively, now forming delicate patterns across Sing's skin that mirrored the neural pathways beneath. Where it connected, his tissue seemed to transform, taking on a subtle metallic sheen while remaining fully organic. "Cellular adaptation proceeding as anticipated," Tanaka confirmed. "No signs of rejection or negative transformation. His body is welcoming the communion." After 47 minutes, the process reached its completion. The external xenometal filaments had been fully absorbed, integrated into Sing's biology in a way that defied conventional medical understanding. As the chamber atmosphere normalized, he sat up slowly, examining his transformed body with an expression of wonder. The changes were both subtle and profound. His skin bore intricate patterns, similar to those seen on the Vex, though less extensive. These patterns pulsed with inner light that synchronized with his heartbeat and breathing. When he moved, there was a new fluidity to his motions, as if his muscular and skeletal systems had been optimized beyond human baseline. "Lieutenant Sing," Elena addressed him formally as the chamber opened. "How do you feel?" He looked up, and Elena was struck by the change in his eyes. Still human in form, but with an inner luminescence reminiscent of Vex eyelights. "Commodore, I feel—" He paused, seemingly struggling to find adequate words. "Complete. As if I've been operating with only half my senses until now." The medical team conducted immediate evaluations, confirming what was visibly apparent. Sing had not merely survived the integration, but had been enhanced by it. His physical strength had increased by approximately 30%. His neural processing speed showed similar improvement. Most remarkably, his cellular regeneration rate had accelerated dramatically, suggesting significantly improved healing capabilities and possibly extended lifespan. The communion acknowledges a new voice. Commander Vox stated his own xenometal components, pulsing in apparent response to Sing's presence. "It recognizes you as kindred now, Lieutenant Sing." This successful integration transformed the research program overnight. What had been a cautious exploration of alien technology became the foundation for a new evolutionary path, a deliberate enhancement of human capabilities through partnership with the living metal. Not everyone embraced this development. Within Earth's governance structures, debates raged about the implications. Some saw it as a dangerous blurring of humanity's biological integrity. Others recognized it as the natural next step in human evolution and adaptation. The Galactic Council's response was similarly divided. The elder species, particularly those who had evolved on more hospitable worlds, expressed grave concerns about what they termed self-directed biological manipulation. Younger species, especially those who had faced environmental challenges similar to Earth's, showed greater interest in the possibilities it represented. 6 months after Singh's successful integration, a formal diplomatic summit was convened on the neutral ground of Proxima Station. Representatives from Earth Vexus and the Galactic Council gathered to establish protocols for what was now being called xeno-integration technology. Elena, now serving as Earth's chief diplomatic representative for Vex relations, found herself at the center of these negotiations. Her first-hand experience with both the Vex civilization and the Xenometal communion made her uniquely qualified to bridge the cultural and conceptual gaps between the various parties. The fundamental principle we must establish, she argued, during one particularly heated session, is that of informed consent. Integration with Xenometal must always be a choice made by individuals with full understanding of the implications, never imposed or coerced. This principle became the cornerstone of the Proxima Accords, a framework that recognized xenointegration as a legitimate path of development while establishing strict ethical boundaries around its implementation. Earth and Vexus would share their research under carefully regulated conditions with the Galactic Council, providing oversight to prevent military exploitation. As the Accords were finalized, a new era began for both human and Vex civilizations. The first generation of integrated humans, colloquially called synths, though the term was technically inaccurate, became bridges between species able to communicate directly with both the Xenometal communion and standard human consciousness. Lieutenant Singh, as the first successful integrant, became an ambassador of sorts, helping others understand and prepare for the communion process. His enhanced capabilities proved particularly valuable in extreme environments, reinforcing the evolutionary advantage that integration represented for species from challenging worlds. 3 years after the Havoc's original mission to Vexus, Elena herself chose to undergo integration. Having delayed her personal participation until the safety protocols were thoroughly established, she finally embraced the transformation that she had helped pioneer. Her communion experience differed from Singh's in subtle but significant ways. Where his integration had enhanced primarily physical and neural processing capabilities, Elena's communion manifested more strongly in heightened sensory perception and intuitive decision-making. The Xenometal adapted differently to each individual, enhancing their existing strengths, rather than imposing a standardized template. As the first high-ranking military officer to undergo integration, Elena's transformation carried symbolic significance. It represented Earth's full commitment to the evolutionary partnership with both the Vex and the Xenometal communion itself. Following her integration, Elena was appointed commander of a new joint fleet Earth and Vex vessels, working in concert to secure their shared interests in an increasingly complex galactic political landscape. The UES Havoc, now retrofitted with xenometal-enhanced systems, served as her flagship. 5 years to the day after the Havoc's original arrival at Vexus, Elena stood on the observation deck of the destroyer, watching as a joint Earth-Vex installation took shape in orbit around a newly surveyed Deathworld, one that, like Earth and Vexus, had produced resilient lifeforms under punishing conditions. Commander Vox joined her, his form now so extensively integrated with Xenometal that he barely resembled the being she had first met on Vexus. Their communication had evolved beyond verbal exchange, with direct communion harmonics supplementing spoken language. "The Council still doesn't fully understand," Elena observed, watching a Galactic Council observer vessel, maintaining a cautious distance from the construction project. "They see technology politics' strategic advantage, but they miss the fundamental truth. That survival creates its own form of communion," Vox completed her thought. "That civilizations born of hardship recognize each other in ways those from gentle worlds never can." Elena nodded, the Xenometal patterns beneath her skin pulsing in agreement. "They sent us to Vexus expecting a rescue mission. Instead, we found partners." "And much more," Vox added. "The communion expands. Other Deathworld species show compatibility, the network grows. That was perhaps the most profound implication of what had begun with the Havoc's mission. The alliance between Earth and Vexus had expanded to include other civilizations that had evolved under extreme conditions, a growing coalition of species united not by political convenience, but by shared evolutionary experience. The Galactic Council, with its dominance by species from more hospitable worlds, found itself increasingly counterbalanced by what was now formally called the Deathworld Compact, an alliance of civilizations for whom survival was not merely a political concept, but an ingrained biological imperative. "What do you think they fear most?" Elena asked, watching the council vessel adjust its position. "The technology, the military implications." "Neither," Vox replied. "They fear what you represent, a new kind of civilization, neither fully biological nor technological, evolving faster than their political structures can adapt to. They fear obsolescence." Elena considered this. The integration of xenometal with human biology had indeed accelerated human development beyond conventional projections. Similar effects were being observed among the Vex and the other compact species who had begun communion with the living metal. "Perhaps their fear isn't entirely misplaced," she acknowledged. "We are becoming something they can't easily categorize or control. Something new in the galaxy." "Not new," Vox corrected. "Merely returning to what life has always been: adaptation in response to challenge. The gentle worlders forgot this principle when their environments no longer demanded it. The communion merely restores the natural order." As they spoke, a surge of communication passed through the xenometal network. The orbital installation had successfully established its first connection with the indigenous lifeforms of the planet below. Another potential addition to the growing communion of survivor species. Elena couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come from that first desperate mission, when the Havoc had arrived at Vexus, expecting merely to secure a technological advantage. Instead, they had found a new evolutionary path, one that promised to redefine humanity's place in the galaxy. The Galactic Council had sent humanitarian aid to a struggling Deathworld. Earth had sent a warship. And in doing so, they had discovered not just allies in survival, but partners in becoming something greater than either species could have achieved alone. As the stars wheeled overhead, and the communion pulsed through her enhanced consciousness, Elena knew that they stood at the beginning of a new chapter in galactic history, one written not by politicians or diplomats, but by those who understood what it meant to evolve in the face of impossible odds. The Deathworlders had reached out to each other, and together they were becoming something magnificent.